Let's start there with Marc Ross from Caracal. We heard some very strong language coming out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and from the Ministry of Commerce in China. They seem to be reading the latest moves by the White House as a negotiating tactic. So if that's the case, at what point does the tactic stop working? Because this is a pattern now.
Well, I don't really, that's interesting. I mean, is it working at all has been a good question. I mean, the biggest problem, frankly, the Trump administration has is they have a divided front. Like you have the Treasury Department saying one thing, you have the Agriculture Department saying one thing, you have Navarro saying one thing. So there really isn't a united message. I'm sure it's not only confusing for the Chinese government, but also for American business.
And yet the markets seem to be pretty even. I mean, down overall since the beginning of the year when all this started. But at the same time, it's not riding up and down. So should we just then follow the Dow Jones Industrial?
Well, I mean, the market obviously is responding, I'd say, to headline risk. And as we know, the market really isn't the full extent of the economy. It's just a daily snapshot. I think people that work on this issue day in and day out know that there's some friction and irritation. I wouldn't say it's really a full-on trade war that provides a lot of sexy headlines. But at the end of the day, the people are still talking, governments are still working, commerce is being sent across the Pacific. So, on balance, if you look at the big picture, things are moving forward.
And we should point out people-to-people exchanges are still happening too, although they may get caught in the crossfire a little bit here.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think if you step back and look at day in and day out, things are happening. Now, is there a lot of headline risk? Is there a lot of saber-rattling on both sides? Absolutely.
Let me take you to some of the finer points within the United States on these tariffs. And, we've got this Silicon Valley and the tech sector. This interest group has a quote I want to put up about tariffs. They say tariffs do not work point blank. Moving forward with tariffs on goods imported from China will harm U.S. consumers and businesses and will fail to change China's discriminatory and damaging trade practices. And yet we heard Peter Navarro there, the trade advisor to the U.S. president, say that's exactly what the tariffs are supposed to be trying to do. Do we have any indication that the White House is listening to big business who says, listen, this is not the way to go about it?
The White House is listening to a lot of different folks. I mean, as you can see, tariffs certainly create a false input in the economy and the market. I would totally agree with that statement. They simply will just force importers or suppliers that are looking for products to find other markets that don't have these tariffs, so it doesn't really solve the problem in the short run. It certainly pacifies certain segments of the business economy that look for protection, and tariffs is the way to do that.
Yeah, there are those who say tariffs will help give them a level playing field as well.
Right. We've seen a long history, obviously, in the steel industry seeking tariffs going back 10, 15, 20 years. And, overall, it really hasn't helped in the sense like they're still in business, but increasing employment really hasn't happened. So tariffs may feel good on the campaign trail, but in the bigger scheme of things of economics, they really don't work.
What about agricultural pressure? Because a lot of the states that voted for Donald Trump, and again, that piece is domestic, are being targets of what China's promising to be the retaliatory tariffs, these tariffs on largely farm goods.
America's farmers are so productive that they have the luxury of sending products around the world. So certainly, if you look at a soybean farmer in Ohio, every 1 out of 5 rows, one of those rows is going to go to China. So they know full on that those products need other markets. So agriculture is a product that needs other markets, and it needs to be shipped. And certainly the Chinese know that very well. For them to respond, to put pressure on farm state senators and the White House is a good way to do that. But it is a product that needs markets.
Secretary Ross, as we know, heading on Friday to Beijing for 3 days of meetings. Any idea whether he will, in fact, emerge with some sort of deal? He's got a lot on the line personally in the context of his relationship with the White House here.
I think it's interesting. Over the next few weeks, we have a lot of activity going on. I mean, there's folks meeting right now in Paris. You have the G7 coming up in early June.
Right, yeah.
You even have obviously the North Korea summit you talked about. Yeah, I think a deal will be made. What that deal says and what's in those details is yet to be said. I think in some ways, both Beijing, there are politicians in both Beijing and D.C. that are looking for a way out of this. They want to find some kind of solution, which a lot of the folks in the business community would rather see solutions instead of sanctions.
We will, good line, solutions instead of sanctions. Thanks for that. I may be stealing that. Thanks, Marc Ross.